have a conference in
All right, we'll call this meeting of Whitebluff Planning Commission work session to order. Mr. Jeff, would you call the roll, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Raymond Alders.
Present.
Linda Hayes.
Here.
Debbie Brewer.
Here.
Elizabeth Littleton.
Here.
Connie Reed.
Here.
Okay. We all had time to look over the minutes of the last meeting in October 8th.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we don't have a motion.
Oh, we don't do that today, of course not. We do that Tuesday. But we do make motions tonight.
Tonight.
Tonight we make motions.
My life is confused.
All right, we discussed the regulations for the planning board, vote for the purpose of, Highway 70 Church. Ms. Alex was, or some of them.
We're back here.
Okay.
Brandon and Trent.
All right, no, anything new to say on it?
So Mr. Chair, if I may, and I'm sure the applicant will want to speak to it, but if you recall at the last planning commission meeting, the planning commission wanted the town's engineer to look at some of the traffic aspects of the plan. And Mr. James is here, and he's prepared to talk about some of those that have been discussed with the applicant. So if you want to hear from the town engineer, and then maybe ask the developer to come up to speak to those, that might be best. That's just my suggestion.
Okay.
So Mr. James is here, if you want to call him up.
Okay. Enlighten us a little bit on that.
Well, as I said, I'm not infectious, don't worry. Bush hogging will do me every time. All right, thank you all for allowing me to be here. The thing that I guess the town charged us with originally on this project was to look at the traffic studies that have been developed. And we've done that a couple of times, and you all have all that information. But since then, of course, there's a lot of discussion about a left turn lane in conjunction with the HUD project. And we've done a few things since then. One is, I just recommended to Jeff and the council, the barrister, and the planner that maybe the first thing to do would be to talk to the Department of Transportation just to see if it's permissible. You know, if TDOT would allow this to even happen. And we did that. We convened a short meeting with them, and answer to the question was yes, they would, welcome that. We started talking about funding. The answer was probably no from the state, and that's not unusual. That they tell me that on virtually every request I make like that on our projects. So. But then we looked at a lot of different things, and as Andrew said, we talked with the developer, had a meeting with them, and talked through some of these things, because one of the things is, how much of US 70 would you actually request to be in the center turn lane that's associated with the project? Since then, I've got some sketches and drawings that I can show you, but the first thing that I would, you've seen all this before, the developer had developed, of course, his master plan, and a couple of different kinds of options for what to do. And this particular one, he called this as option 3, and basically had, the main entrance to the development is kind of on the westerly side, another smaller entrance that was just a right turn out and a right turn in that lined up with Shell's Way, and then showed some center turn lane, and then of course all this hatching is the transition. And we looked at that, and that's what's been presented to you before, is basically a center turn lane to accommodate just the 35 feet of turn lane, about 280 feet of transition. We didn't go through any design, on that. We just looked at that and said, yep, that's probably about right. So we didn't do an exhaustive study of that. And of course, in this particular drawing, the developer mentions that they would put about $100,000 in the project to do that. From what we can determine, and I looked at this several different ways, we did a very similar project several years ago at the Burns Middle School there on State Route 96. And I looked at that. Of course, all that was part of the entire site plan. I tried to break out the cost for the center turn lane, and it looks like that one cost about $400,000. So it has some very, very similar to this. More
About the
recent,
same distance, Darryl?
very similar.
Very
Yeah.
similar, okay, okay.
More recently, there's been a center turn lane on State Route 96 for that Dollar General market that just was built in the last little bit. And the developer says that cost about $250,000. But he also made mention that that bid was a lot lower than some of the other bids they got. So, in our opinion, they got a bargain. The other thing, though, that impacts this particular project versus those kind of projects, that's a more rural area. And so, in this particular project, one would have to look at, especially the storm drainage. On State Route 96, it's all ditches on the side of the road. And basically, they just improved the ditches and paved, and that's why that one was pretty cheap. In this particular one, one has to look at what's going to happen to the drainage. Are you going to have to do, say, a curb and gutter instead of ditches? And also, are there any utilities existing that impact the project? They have to be relocated. And there would be multiple driveway connections to that would have some improvement involved. So, we looked at that. Then the request was, okay, well, what if we wanted to do something like this, but go all the way to State Route 7 at McDonald's where that left turn lane is now? So, just to give you some feel for it, the project that I just described was about 695 feet total, which is about what this one is. If you went with that, I'm just calling it alternate one. If you wanted to go to the McDonald's intersection, that project all of a sudden is about 1,835 feet. So it's significantly more. We also looked at a couple of other alternates and to kind of look at that same, trying to get the turn lane all the way to State Route 47. And we looked at maybe modifying this so that this main entrance would actually line up with Shell's Way. So you see, you shorten that up some, and then swap this entrance for this side. Of course, that would require some redesign by the developer team. If you went with that, that shortens that up to about 1,350 feet. The other alternate that we looked at was to go all the way from this property corner, just assuming that any kind of a request from a developer, you probably couldn't go further than the extent of the development itself. Of course, that's even more. To go from there all the way to McDonald's, that's about 2,475 feet. So, it's significant cost. And I mentioned, of course, the other impacts, again, the drainage. I don't know that you would have to have the curb and gutter, but that's a design issue. the utility relocations, just looking at this and where the survey shows existing utilities, some may have to be relocated, but it doesn't appear that a lot would. But until you actually do design, you really don't know. So that kind of summarizes those kinds of alternates that one might look at if you wanted to try to get the turn lane from this development all the way to McDonald's. The other thing that was researched was the county and the town of White Bluff and Dixon, City of Dixon and others just went through strategic planning kind of effort, including transportation. And one of the short-term projects that is in that study is a turn lane from State Route 47 here all the way to State Route 47, which is past this project. And they call it a short-term project because they felt like it probably needs to be planned and done. And their estimate to do all of that was slightly over $1 million. So I guess, in essence, your decision is going to be based on what you could require the developer to do to start that process, phase it in, or do it all at one time, or whatever you think. Other than the left turn lane, we talked about a couple of other things. And one is, in the development itself, in that master plan, the intent is for all the commercial to enter and exit off of US 70, but all of the residential to enter and exit off of Church Street, and not allow traffic in between. We felt like if that was something that was going to be done, that Church Street probably needed to be upgraded through that section. And that's something for you to consider. Another thing we talked about, again, these are all generalities, was in the development, maybe instead of having this all exiting and entering here and this all exiting and entering here, what about taking this and actually making it a through road through the entire development? Now that changes the traffic study that was done, but if we're going to have a center turn lane in this vicinity anyway, it did appear to us that maybe that would be a concept that needed to be studied. Just to have, all of your emergency vehicles, fire or ambulances, EMA, police, anything that happens here probably needs to have access through the facility. And so that would be one of our recommendations, would be to relook at what the cause and effect of that particular thing. And with that, generally, that's what we've talked about. So I would defer to you if you've got questions. I'll try my best to answer those.
I mean, again, what you said the prices was on alternate one, did you say, what was your estimated price on alternate one?
Okay, this is, and again, we didn't go through an exhaustive, how much do all the items cost. What I did was, I looked at what was said about the turn lane at the Dollar General I mentioned on State Route 96. And our opinion is that particular turn lane probably should have cost somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. On a linear foot basis, and we broke it down to that causes the turn lane and the improvements to be somewhere between $575 a linear foot and about $700 a linear foot. depending on what you had. So, and I didn't do that calculation, but if you just say, let's just say it's $600, $600 times 1,835 feet, what is that? It's $800,000, so it looks like. And then you could, and of course, we can go to a lot of study and detail and try to determine all that, but I think it just gives you a feel for about what this is going to be.
I think I asked the wrong question, you actually answered it, though. I really wanted the linear feet. It was 1,835.
Yes,
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Again, that's measuring off of Google Earth maps.
Yeah. Okay.
If I may ask a couple quick questions, what's the total frontage of the project on Highway 70? Property line to property line, and I think that's important because the current approved PUD has the condition of a turn lane from property line to property line, so I think that distance is helpful.
It's about 1,116 feet. Again, we just scaled that off, about 1,100.
A little over 11.
Yeah.
And the scenarios you talked about, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but again, for my clarity, and I know it's the first time they're hearing this, option one, alternate one, is turn lane from where it starts at McDonald's, basically, covering both entrances.
Correct.
Alternate two would be swapping those entrances and only having it go to the main entrance on the east side of the property.
Correct.
And then alternate three was the really long one, that's just all the way, basically over to Church Street.
Correct.
And that second alternate was about 1,350 feet, was that right?
The second alternate was 1,350 feet. About. One thing I failed to mention when we talked with the folks at TDOT, and of course, they're always thinking about future and things like that. They asked about, well, if you're going to do all this, why don't you do something about that intersection at Church Street and US 70 and go ahead and approving that? Because that is a bad intersection, everybody knows that.
You talk about the angle of the intersection? Yes. And just for clarity for this body, TDOT was not offering up any funds. And this project is not within the 10-year plan, I know that. But.
No. Well, and when we discussed that, he brought up the RPO and the 10-year plan. This project's not in it. Dixon County has no projects in the 10-year plan right this minute, and everybody's upset about that. But getting it in a future 10-year plan, well, the 10-year plans, that's always a 20-year plan by the time you get it built. So that's something to consider. The other thing he mentioned, which I haven't heard this term in several years, but he mentioned a spot safety program. And it exists. They don't put it on the website, but there's usually some funding, but that's usually for very small projects, safety types of projects. The only one that I ever got funded under that's similar to this was about 15 years ago. We got some spot safety money to actually do a center turn lane at Burns at the elementary school going into where the ball fields are now. And we secured that. It never got built, but in that project at that time was about $300,000. But that's the only one I was ever successful with using that money for a turn lane. And wasn't successful, never got bid, but we got the money.
And this will be my last question at the moment. I think we talked about this before, but what did TDOT say about having a turn lane, three lanes effectively, going to two, then back to three?
Yeah, good point.
Because again, the currently approved project has property line to property line, doesn't cover that area from the edge of the property to 47.
Yeah, what they said was, of course, and the town would have to submit an application for any of this, but he did mentioned, which is true. You can't, like, you got a turn lane, you've got the transition into the turn lane. And he called it overlapping transitions. They will not allow that. Now, we didn't press him on what he meant by overlapping. Does that mean the two transitions actually overlap? Or is there some gap between two transitions that they would not allow? We didn't press him on that, because obviously that makes sense. You know, you wouldn't want, you know, a left turn lane, and then all of a sudden you've got a transition, then you got a short section of road, and then you got another transition and another center line. So we didn't press him on exactly how he defined that, but he said that. Thank you. He did say that.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions on this?
Not for,
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have to discuss the resolutions with the.
Wait a minute, we need to,
yeah, I think that we need to hear from the developer.
Yeah, I would recommend if the developer wants to address any of that, and then if y'all have any discussion y'all want to have with the commission. Obviously, you don't have a vote today, but if there's anything you want to ask the developer, engineer, or staff.
Okay.
Okay, you heard what all Mr. James said. What is your response to that?
Well, we're not sure, is there a specific plan that you guys are leaning towards? Then
Well,
Brandon
you
would
know,
be able to talk about how that cost would impact the project. But in all cases,
Yeah.
the cost appeared to be $800,000 up.
for that. Now, you know, the plan that he mentioned that would take it from 47 to 47 is optimal, and that would not be, I mean, that the town would have to share in that, because that is not your project. That's the way I'm thinking. But from the cost of a center turn lane that turns left, and I want to make it clear, that's what we are asking for, is in the center of the highway. From property line to property line, in my way of thinking, is that is the developer's responsibility. That plus if it's going to dump out on, if the residential is going to dump out onto Church, that needs to be addressed also. Those two things, that's what I'm thinking.
There's not an issue with Church Street. We're fine with that, residential coming out and doing what we need to there. The cost to take it all the way down like that, and even in front of the project just being a state road, much different cost than it is doing a residential road. Honestly speaking, we just can't get it penciled. That's just not honest feedback for you.
are you talking about the particular project where we would just make one entrance on Church Street? I mean, it could be a through, and there would be one main. I just want to make sure that I'm following which
Oh,
one
you're
you're
talking about two different things.
I think we're talking about two different things.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, and
Because
she was talking more, the improvements to Church Street is different
Yeah.
than the access from Church to Highway 70. Now, previously, the Planning Commission actually did not want them to connect.
Right.
So that's why we've always been presenting a no connection between Church and Highway 70. But I don't think that's really what you're talking about.
No, that wasn't what I said then, but there is the need, I think, to connect so that emergency vehicles can get through. and not have to turn around somewhere.
Turn around and
Yeah.
go to church, to go to
That
residential.
piece of it. Not necessarily that the residential would, the commercial would dump out onto, church, but that needs to be a go-through so that emergency vehicles can go.
Would it be for emergency vehicles,
Yes.
more or less only?
Yes,
That
that's
would
what
be-
I'm thinking in my mind, that it needs to go
That,
through that.
that would be an
Does
easy,
that sound right?
that's something we can easily do. At
And,
little to no cost.
residential actually goes out onto church, commercial out onto 70, but we still have to have those things that make it safe on both sides.
Well, on church, that's an easy one to talk about. The discussions we've had is that the road could use a little widening. It's a little narrow now, and so the widening of the road, I believe, has been discussed by the developers, and obviously no one wants to spend money, but that's not a big issue.
Yeah.
Highway 70, the inclusion of a middle lane, a turn lane, at the developer's cost is possibly unattainable. From what I understand, and I'm not the one who should be talking about this, I'll shut up and he'll take over in a second. But from what I understand, the cost of that is prohibitive and prevents this project from moving forward.
Well, I get that maybe, but even the state is saying, for safety purposes, that is a thing that really needs to be considered.
Wait a second.
Did the state
Did the
say
state
that?
They said that? I've not
They
heard
talked
any.
about safety issues, through their conversation.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear anything about that.
Did you, Darryl, you want to
I
address
can
that?
address that.
Yeah.
The state didn't say that specifically. They said that they would permit it. What was said specifically was the transportation plan that was done,
Okay.
that's where it says it's specifically a short-term project.
That, the comp plan.
Right.
Wasn't, TDOT's not aware of the comp plan per se, that's a local issue. So
Okay,
the comp plan
so-
that was adopted talked about, that, the SP three project, short-term,
Yeah.
47 to 47, that needing to have a center turn lane, and one of the reasons was safety, but that's in the comp plan that you
Right,
adopted in
okay.
2023.
So, okay, then I'll roll back. Maybe the state didn't say that. They gave us the go-ahead that it would be a great idea. But in my way of thinking, it is a safety thing. That's me.
Sure, no, I understand. Can I?
Sure, yeah.
And still, he's the one talking the dollars and cents for this project. But the issue of that safety, that's a pre-existing condition. Our project, with or without our project, you still have a safety issue.
But nobody's turning in there right now. We're talking
Well,
about just
I
your
understand.
responsibility.
And what he has spent approximately $25,000 on traffic studies to show that his project does not reduce or improve that level of service or the safety issue.
Well, isn't all the townhomes, a lot of people are gonna be turning off the 70 onto Church Street to get to their homes.
It'd be 56 homes, if I remember correctly. And I went to sleep last night, so I may be wrong, but I think it's 56 homes. So the residents would be turning onto Church from 70, presumably they're not coming any other way, and going into the homes. And the traffic study indicated that that level of increase in traffic does not change the service of Highway 70, the level of service on Highway 70.
Having to turn in, and be turning in too, that's.
Which way are they coming from, though? Are you talking about they're gonna turn on church here, they're gonna turn on church down there? I mean, which is the,
I don't know, they could be coming from 47, or they could be coming from Nashville, or they could be coming from Dixon, which would make a big difference that way. But it's just, is there even 60 homes on Church Street right now? It's just a lot more traffic right there.
Okay, anybody have any?
I have a question about the numbers. Mr. James was saying 400,000 to 500,000, you're saying we can't do it for less than 8. So where's that difference? You're saying it's gonna be almost
Well,
double what his numbers
You were mentioning $600 a foot, and I did the math when he was throwing out the numbers, and it seemed like at 1,300 feet, we were at $800,000.
Yeah, 575 to 700 is the range per foot.
I hadn't done the math, I was just going by that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I'm just gonna say what I think. Doesn't matter. I'm on the way out anyway, so it doesn't. What I think is we should be more interested right now. Just take their whole thing out of it. We've got so much commercial out there right now. It's kind of dangerous. When you go down that little dip to the dollar store, it's bad. And then we've got 2 over here. That's, 10 years ago, we didn't have all that. I think that, I'm just going to say, I think that the town should be looking more and more interested in somehow figuring out a way, let's just go ahead and widen from here at McDonald's and make it safe all the way out there to, wherever you turn off to go to Burns, to 47. Now, that's going to be, what did you say, $1 million at least?
Well, that's what the engineer that did the comprehensive plan said, a little over $1 million, and they're probably not correct.
Of course, the town would not be expected to do all that million, but the thing is, we are late in the game of having the dollar store do it. We're late in the game of having Grogan Glass, one of my favorite businesses, of Subway, of Car Care. We're late in the game of that. But we need it for the safety of our citizens, and I cannot think of one citizen, surely, that would object to that. Now, going from the council side, I know it's going to be a budget thing. But if we keep waiting, I mean, to me, this is something that's needed, and then, of course, later on, I know the argument, it's going to be out that way too. It's probably, it is. I mean, we've just got more traffic, you know. If we keep waiting, if the town keeps waiting to do this, it's $1 million, it's never going to not be needed. How is it going to be safe if we don't do that middle lane? It's never just going to get better on its own. It's just going to keep increasing the cost and the cost. So I would have an answer what I would do, but like I said, I'm not I'm not saying anymore what I do, because you know. But it would be a very simple thing to me, what I would do. I'm more interested right now, and you still would pay a part of it, and y'all would have to do a part, but I'm more interested right now in making the whole entire area safe, and not, I've always said this, since this came up on day one, you go here and you got 3 lanes, and you go to the Subway and you start coming in, back to 2 lanes, and then you go and you're going 2 lanes just for a little ways, and then we're going back out to 3 lanes, and then we're going back into, that makes no sense to me.
No,
That makes no sense.
and I agree. I agree that we need to go from red light to 47. You know,
Yeah.
That's what we need to do, and part of that is the responsibility of the town. It just is. The part that I don't think is our responsibility is in front of this project, and that's the chunk that I'm because, and I think it needs to be done together, because it'd be stupid to not.
Can I say something? The property in front, their property line is 1,100 feet long. On the other side of the road, there's been added within the last few years 70-plus homes coming out to Shell, and almost exactly opposite of this project. They are much responsible for the traffic in front of our development. It kind of seems a little onerous to say it's all him, when there's we don't have 70 homes coming in our project. But yet they came in, and I don't think they've contributed to any lane in that area.
We don't have that land, but again, yes, you're not gonna have that many houses, but you're gonna have commercial, and they are not an R3 PUD. You are. It's different. The things that we can ask for are different. It just is. And the needs, that's where I'm at now. That's where I was at from the very beginning, that there was going to be a turn lane there.
We've got there, think about it, we've got a liquor store, and we've got Dairy Queen, and we've got Shell's Way, and I would say, even though it's not an R3, I don't know what it is, R2, Roy, I don't know what it is.
Which one?
Belfords.
Well, you got some R3, you got your townhouses,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's kind
what I
of
thought
mixed,
they were R3,
it's mixed,
yeah.
and you got,
Yeah, but no matter what it's all zoned, I'm just looking at the whole thing as a whole, the whole highway going out through there. And I know we're not, I know that y'all hopefully would feel the same way. I'm just looking at the safety of that length of highway, period, with all the businesses in there now, Now, I think that we have the right to ask them to contribute to it. I wish that we would have, instead of just bringing those businesses in, this is a learning curve. We change our ordinances every month. Every month here, we learn new things. And I think if we had it to do over, we'd probably already have it paved out through there, because we would require these businesses and things, but we didn't. And so now, this is new coming up. I will just be honest with you, I don't want to lose this development. I really don't. I think it's a good development. I've looked at red clay dirt for 40 years. I'm sick of it.
Long time.
A long time. So whatever we can do to require them to help with this, I am for that. And I think, though, to turn this development down when the state does not say we have to have it, they'll tell you can do anything, but you're going to pay for it. They don't care if you widen, anything, they'll tell you, sure, we'll for it, but you're going to pay for it. And eventually, and this is probably, maybe, I know not in this term, but maybe not even in my lifetime, eventually, I think we all understand, we're going to have 3-lane all the way out to Cheatham County. That's another thing, I understand that, but right at this moment, just talking about this end and safety, I think we need to hold them to, we can hold them to a turning lane. But I also think in doing that we've got to recognize, in my opinion, it is the town's responsibility. If TDOT won't help us, maybe they will. It's the town's responsibility to finish making that safe. So if we're going to do just a little part of it here and leave the little sections of it, that's just hard for me to fathom.
No, I think that we need to do it as a project.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can't get over the part though that there needs to be, and I know it needs to be from red light to 47. I know that, and we would probably have to have a capital project to do that, to do our portion of it.
Yeah.
But we still, everybody can disagree. It's okay. There still needs to be a requirement for that in front of that project. I agree that we didn't require it in the smaller ones or whatever, but, hindsight's 20/20. We can't just keep saying, well, we didn't do it, so we're not going to do it.
But is it enough to turn down a project?
If they are not willing, there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but if they are not willing to do what that is being asked of them, I don't know.
And that's why we started, anybody that builds commercially, it has to provide a sidewalk now, where we didn't used to.
Yeah.
It's the same pretty much on the same lines, just a lot more expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
A lot to think
we're
about.
gonna fix that with connectivity, I guess. I think all of that will be redone just about. But anyway.
There's a lot to think about.
It is.
Tuesday.
It really is. It is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just some things for y'all to think on, because I think clarity will be important. You know, this body doesn't ultimately decide. You're going to make a
Right.
recommendation up to the town council. I think they'll be looking to what is your recommendation. I think you need to be specific about Church Street, whether you're going to require it to be widened. It's staff's opinion that under the subdivision regulations, it should be the 24 feet. It's 20 feet right now. I think there's not much, if any, disagreement on that. I think y'all need to be clear about the connection of the residential part to the commercial. There was some discussion about emergency only, or is it going to be an actual road? So think about that. And then on the turn lane, just a few clarifying points for the record. You know, as the mayor said, our regulations change from time to time. And, you know, this town adopted the comp plan in 2023, which called for a turn lane there. You don't absolutely have to follow it, but it is strong guidance. This is the first project like this in this section of road that has come along since the adoption of the comp plan. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. So that's one reason it's a little different for this one. It's also a PUD, which is different than other projects in the area. Again, they predate the comp plan. Also, the safety action plan talked about safety issues in this stretch of road. So it's well identified, but that's kind of the reason this is a little different than it was before. But I think y'all need to be specific about what you're asking. Mr. James talked about a couple of scenarios. I think y'all, if you are going to make a contingency, if at all, you need to be specific about which one you're doing. And you can certainly call Daryl or Jeff or myself to talk about the specifics of those. But I think you need to be specific about what you're requesting, because the developer's going to have a hard time responding if they don't know exactly what you're asking, right? And then if there's a discussion about, hey, we need to do this whole thing and they need to pay their fair share, that's a different discussion. You're talking about putting money into escrow versus them doing, you know, we need to do 2,400 feet, they need to do X number of feet of it, the town will get to the rest later. That's one way, or money and the town do it all. Those are very different things, and ultimately a lot of that would be decided by the council because that deals with budget and roads. But I think y'all need to be specific. Are you asking the developer to do work or pay money? And be specific about which one of those there are, because then they're going to have to respond to that and explain to the council why it works, why it doesn't work, or they would of course be able to float alternatives to that the council could consider. You know, you're making a recommendation. The council's going to be the ultimate decider. It is 2 readings at the council level, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion there. But I would just ask for clarity from this body. And when it comes up, I would ask each of those contingencies be their own motion, just so you can be thinking about it. I move to X, and then there's a vote. And then all the contingencies need to have individual votes. I think it's cleaner that way. It's easier for Jeff to take notes on what that is. So that's my 2 cents.
And that's what we need to, that's Tuesday,
Tuesday.
And that's what we would need to actually send it up to the council. We're going to send it up one way or the other.
Unless there's something you want to see that would need you more time to weigh, but it seems like y'all are ready to act one way or another, so if you do, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
The simplest thing would be if y'all would go back to your first site plan that we approved and do it. This is really, because it's really throwing a monkey wrench in it. So is there, Brandon, is there just no chance of that? We've already approved one site plan that would be approved, right?
The PUD has been approved, the prior PUD that's out there. That they are coming back with a new PUD based upon a number of factors I think they've looked at.
Yeah. And I just want to say one more thing. In our discussion, our meeting the other day, when we were talking, Daryl, about a road that maybe just one main entrance coming in the residential off of Church, and it would go all, that one main road would go all the way through to the main entrance on 70, or maybe I misunderstood, that's what I thought. Because that would be one main road, and then of course, you might want to call it alleys, road or whatever would cut off, to go to residential, but there would be one main road that would accommodate any school bus, trash, anything, fire engine.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, there would not be a center turn lane at the western entrance or Church Street. You would be focusing on that eastern entrance, making that a full entrance there. In that scenario, I'm not saying that's what should happen, I'm just saying that's how that was taught, then we have a cut through down, more connectivity down to Church.
Yeah, and in that instance, and I don't know how you monitor it, but I would not want to see large delivery trucks coming out onto Church. It's one thing for our emergency vehicles going out there and our trash pickup.
You can put signs up,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah, they have to have a
the sign
turnaround,
versus
yeah.
enforcement.
Well, I'll ask this, and maybe I'm too confused of everything that's been said, but would y'all consider on financially helping out the city on?
That's one of our options.
Yes, sir.
Or one of the options that's presented in the plan, in the book, is a donation to the city for road improvement.
Okay.
How much was the
I
donation,
believe it was,
100,000?
I think it was 100,000.
That's not a large, no, that's not.
That's not a whole lot, it's not capped for improvement, we just need it for general improvement, but, and this, from what we're learning today about the linear feet and how much it is for linear feet, that's, I don't know, I was just planning on, bringing to the council, that I thought the city, we should just, no matter what we required you all to do, while that paving and everything's going on, just taking that, just going and biting the bullet, making it safe, 3-lane up through there. But anyway, that's another deal. Okay. It's a whole lot. It is a whole lot. It's a lot. It really is.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Was the original phased or no? The original approval? Was it going to be done in phases or was it going to be all at once?
I believe it was going to be residential commercial also. Now, that commercial was a mixed use, it was commercial and residential combined.
Right.
But we thought the traditional residential was going to be first.
I was just wondering.
I think I've done it, that's all I got.
Okay. Anyone else have any more questions, discussions, statements? All right, we thank you.
Thank you.
Now, down to Mr. Andrews for the discussion of resolution for Article 3, Section A, 15 street names.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, remind me, we were going to look at this today, but then it has not been put out for public hearing yet, has it?
No, it has not.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, this is just going to be on the work session. Y'all are not going to see this on Tuesday, but if y'all were good with this version, Jeff was going to put this out. This is the subdivision regulation change. It'll be for public hearing and vote at the December meeting. I believe it's as we talked about in the last meeting, putting some parameters on the naming of new streets within subdivisions. You can see A through H there. Some of this is USPS standards, not exceeding 15 characters. One correct official name should be appropriate, with preferred one-word primary street name, promoting tradition, history, geography, and character. Frivolous and complicated words or unconventional spelling should not be used. Special characters are not permitted. No Roman numerals. No duplication of road names within the town, so you can't say Taffy with the C and then Kathy with the K, that's going to create any confusion. And offensive, libelous, or derogatory right-of-way names in spelling or pronunciation are prohibited. The Planning Commission may reject a right-of-way name and require a compliant name at the time of consideration of the preliminary or final plat. So that's kind of a catch-all. If something just we didn't talk about here comes up, when the plat comes up, that's your time to speak now or forever hold your peace, so to speak, on the road name. So this would be a change to the subdivision regulations, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I'm good with this. We talked about it last month, and I'm good with that clarification.
And we'll put it out for public hearing and vote at the December meeting.
Any more on that, Mr. Henry?
No, sir.
Okay. We have now to discuss the rezoning request for the Mountains property, Highway 70. Jimmy Mann, would you like to come forward and tell us a little bit?
The biggest thing is I want to tear the whole building down and just completely rebuild it. Into something that looks a lot nicer for the city. It works easier for us as a business. We've been there 30 years this year. You know, Mom and Daddy started that place, and I don't plan on letting it go. But the way it is now, some of the walls need to be replaced. So instead of just trying to nickel and dime it here and there and fix it like Daddy did for years, I just want to tear it down and completely redo it. And the way C2 is there's a 50-foot setback from the front and a 20-foot setback from the rear. Going to C1, there wouldn't be any setbacks to where I could actually utilize what property I have.
That was the only question I had. Were you going to have to, just doing this, were you going to be required to? Okay.
It's totally unusable right now under C2.
Yeah.
If for anything, that's like what it's sitting as right now, so we're trying to clean this up. This is all before us, you know, so we gotta clean this up before the man can use this property.
Yeah.
It's probably better to rezone it than it is for anything he has to do to go to the BZA. That's not efficient.
I'm good with that. I just didn't know if it was, I didn't realize about the setbacks.
Yeah, C2 is designed for more intensive commercial, so you kind of want a little bit more space around it. So he is losing some uses by going down to C1, but he's gaining in the lack of setbacks. So that's kind of the balance here.
Right now, my property is only 60 foot from the road back to the back side of the property. If you go 50 foot from the front with a setback and 20 foot from the rear, I'm minus 10 foot already.
Got a pencil line involved.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I can't really do anything with it.
Well, I think you have to build straight up.
Well,
It's all in
you know, when you still got to tear the walls out that's down there, that's, you know, it floods when it rains. So let's go back in and put a retaining wall and all that and take care of that.
When are you going to be able to start, I mean, if we get this rezoned, when are you going to be able to?
Then when we close next November.
Okay.
I already had actually had everything already worked out for this year if we could have got it done.
Yeah.
But it's been good. So it took forever to get it surveyed, so I wouldn't know what I could do and where I could go.
Yeah.
And if we either got, you know, if I could have got it surveyed 5 months ago when I wanted it, we'd already been there.
Mr. Chairman, you've got in your packet, Amanda wasn't able to be here today, but she did review this, and in your packet, staff has no opposition to the rezoning.
Okay.
We just need to make a recommendation then.
Well, vote on it.
You vote on it,
Vote, yeah.
recommendation.
And would there be like, should I have like 2 or 3 readings on it?
So there's 3 total meetings.
Right.
Tuesday will be the first. And
Right.
then it'll become an ordinance for the town council. They'll have a first and second reading, public hearing at the second reading. So you're looking at, if there's no deferrals or denials, it would be January.
Right. And we normally open in April, but there's no way to complete it from then till when we first open in April, so we have to operate.
That's why you're going next November, that
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
Okay, anyone else have any more comments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Next, a reminder of the, planning board training session Friday, November 15th,
Except it's the 22nd.
and at the, Business Center.
No, sir. I keep that in wrong. The date is November the 22nd. Make sure you change that date, November the 22nd.
Okay.
And it's not at the Biz Center, it's in this room right here. But it is November the 22nd, not November 15th.
All right.
So the reason we're gonna be able to have it here is because of our mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sharp.
Anything else need to talk about? Discussion. From 15 to 22.
Yes, sir.
All right. I hear a motion to adjourn.
We don't have.
Adjourn.
You just call the adjournment.
All right, we adjourn.
It's rain. Put your blame on the rain.
I'm going to verify.
Commitment.
I do.
But he's got 15 here.
When you had